right. With exponents, the pattern for exponents, I'll just do the squareds. If we've got, or the twos, I mean, 2 to the 6th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So that's 64. 2 to the 5th, there's 5 of them multiplied together, which is 32. 2 to the 4th is 16. 2 cubed, 8. 2 squared, 4. 2 to the 1st is 2. So what the pattern is, now if I did the 3's too, I'll just start with 3 to the 4th is, that's 81. 3 cubed, 27. 3 squared, 9. 3 to the 1st is 3. So what happens on exponents is, since it's the 2's being squared, to get from one to the next, what do they keep doing?
Subtracting.
No. Divide by 2 is the pattern.
How are you dividing it?
Because 4 divided by 2 is 2, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so to get from one to the next.
You divided by 21 on that one?
Okay, so what do they do when it's the 3's? Divide by 3. So, that works with the 4's, the 5's, any number. So if you do the pattern, 2 to the 0 and 3 to the 0 is going to equal?
0.
Is it? It's going to be 1.
It's going to be 1.
Idiots.
3 to the 0. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So anything anything to the 0 power is always 1. X to the 0 is 1. If you've got 2 squared, x to the 3rd, y to the 5th, z, all raised to the 0,
It's 1.
it's 1. Okay?
Wow.
Now, that pattern continues with negative exponents. 2 to the negative 1st, if we take 1 and divide by 2, what do you get?
Negative.
That'll be like 0.5.
1/2. 2 to the negative 2nd is 1/2. Divided by 2 is 1/4. 2 to the negative 3rd is
1/8.
1/8.
It's just that
You're a
one above
genius.
it.
Right. So 3 to the negative 1st is 1/3. It's not a negative number, it's a fraction. 3 to the negative 2nd is 1/9. 3 to the negative 3rd is 1/27. 3 to the negative 4th is 1/81. Now, you can't rely on the calculator to give this to you. If you put this in the calculator, it's going to give you 0.111111. And there's always 5 or 6 people that do that on the test and get it counted wrong because they're not listening when we do this. Like right now. So,
You just take it and change it.
all it is, is if you notice 3 to the negative 3rd is just the reciprocal of 3 to the 3rd. So anytime you've got a negative exponent,
Just do it the right way. It's just cool.
4 to the negative 3rd, what you do is, on your calculator, figure out what 4 to the 3rd is.
24.
4 times 4 is 16, times another 4 is 64. And since it's negative, that means the answer is 1/64. 1/64. Okay? If you do this on a calculator, it's going to give you a long decimal that will be marked wrong. You got to write them as a fraction. Okay? So, the thing about today's lesson is it's just got negative exponents and 0 exponents. Anything to 0 is 1. Any negative exponent, 5 to the negative 3rd. You figure out what 5 to the 3rd is, and then you just put it under 1. Okay? Yeah.
We're going to have to solve them now.
Yes. So today you're gonna be using the calculator to actually figure out what they are.
Which is the better calculator for this?
They're both the same for these. Your iPad calculators work fine for this too.
Oh, you got that. No, other side. Ice water.
He's like, he's breathing heavy.
Okay, here they've got exponential functions, which is the graph, the green graph up there. A linear function, when you graph it, remembers a straight line. A quadratic, which you guys will do in Algebra 2, is a parabola. An exponential function, it's either going to be an exponential decay, which I'm sure you've heard of, right?
Yeah.
Or an exponential growth. It either goes down or goes up. But we're not going to be really graphing those yet. They're just showing you what that is. So, when we've got a negative exponent, just figure out what 4 squared is. 4 squared is 16, so 4 to the negative second is 1/16. All right, everyone understand that?
Yes.
What?
This is 1. Anything that is 0 is 1. Now, if this would have been written this way,
You won.
it would be -1 because the 0 is only hooked to the 5. Here it's hooked to the parenthesis, which means everything inside is 0 to the 0. If it's not in a parenthesis, you only do it what it's hooked to. 7 to the negative y would be 1/7 to the y. See how that works? Because if it's a negative exponent, 4 to the negative second is 1/16 because 4 squared is 16. So all you do is you just change that to 7 to the y, but then you got to put it on the bottom. So you figure out what that is, put it on the bottom. When this is in parentheses, that means you got to do both of them to the negative first. So it would be 1 to the negative first over 9 to the negative first. Now, this is what's going to make it easier for you in the future when we're doing these. Anytime something has a negative exponent, all you got to do is move it. If it's on the bottom, move it up. If it's on the top, move it down. And it changes it to a positive exponent. So that would move up and change to 9 to the first. This would move down and change to 1 to the first,
So this is 9.
which is just 9. Okay? So when it's a fraction to a negative, what you're going to end up doing is flipping it, and that changes it to a positive exponent. 0 to the negative second is 0, right? Okay, rewrite with positive exponents. So that's what I showed you right here, is we don't want to have any negative exponents in it. So here we've got 7 times 4 to the negative y. So if you remember this, if an exponent is negative, just take it and what it's hooked to, and if it's on the top, you move it to the bottom. If it's on the bottom, you move it to the top. And it just changes the sign of the exponent, not the number itself, just the exponent. So this 7 is just going to stay where it's at, and this is going to move underneath and change that. That's all it is just moving stuff around. But the key is you got to remember, a lot of times people change the sign of the number too. It's just the exponent that changes when you move it from top to bottom or bottom to top. So on this one, there's 3 things. What would you do with the 3? Leave it where it's at. And then that would have to move underneath. And so would that one. That's all it is to it. It's just moving stuff around. Here, you'd have to take them both to the negative second. And then they only want positive exponents. So since they're both negative, you'd have to move them both underneath. So I'd turn to 6 squared d squared. But then, since they moved from the top, you can't just leave it blank. What do you gotta put? A 1, yeah. Now today, they actually have us figure out what that is. So you don't leave it as a power, you'd write it as 1 over 36 d squared. Okay? So this one, it's c to the negative 2x, which we can't figure out. All they want you to know is this property. Since it's a negative exponent and it's on the bottom, you just move it up and it turns to a positive property. Okay. So here's the evaluating with the calculator. Now this is where if you just punch this in, it's going to give you a wrong answer. You need to know the property for negative exponents. So going back to what we did in the last assignment, since it's the same base, what do you do to those? 4 plus negative 4 is, so it's 2 to the 0, which is 1. Power to a power means you multiply 4, and 3 to the 4th, use your calculator, it's 81, because it says to evaluate. Here's one where you need to know the property. If it's 2 to the negative 6, that means that would have to go underneath. It'd be 1 over 2 to the positive 6. So 2 to the 6 is 64. So it's 1/64. Again, if you put that in just the way it is, 2 to the negative 6, you would get 0.015625, which is the decimal of that, but they want the fraction of it. Okay, so again, evaluate, write fractions in the simplest form. This would equal 1 over 2 to the positive 5th, which is 1/32. Another negative exponent, so it's got to go underneath. It'd be 1 over 4 cubed, which is 1/64. Here you got to raise them both to the negative, which means you'd have to flip them both. That would move up, this would move down, and then you got to simplify it, just 7. Same thing here. This would be 1 to the negative first and 5 to the negative first, which means you'd have to flip them both. So it'd be 15 times, this would move up, this would move down, and then you just figure it out. 15 times 5 is 75. This is the one I showed you before. Anything to 0 is 1. But the negative is not included with the 0 because there's no parentheses. That's the only thing that is 0, so that's -1. This would move up, turn to 5 squared, which is 25. So -1 times 25 is -25. Here it's the same base. So what do you do to the exponents? Add them. 1 plus -3 is -2, which means I got to put it underneath, so it's 1 over 3 squared, which is 1/9. This is 1. What's that? 0. 0. And this is the same thing, it's the same base, so you add the exponents. If there's nothing there, that means it's a 1. -1 plus 1 is 0. So 15 to 0 is 1. So those are the evaluated ones, and then we've got the rewriting them with positive exponents. So all it is it's moving stuff around. So if it's negative and it's on top, you just move it to the bottom. And if there's nothing left on top, you got to put a 1 up there. So on this one, it's just this that's negative, so just that has to move up. The 3 didn't have a negative, so that just stays on the bottom. Here we gotta cube everything. So 2 cubed, which is 8. X to the negative second cubed is x to the negative 6, because you multiply. And then y cubed. So that's a negative, so it's gotta move underneath. So the 8 and the y cubed stay on top. The x moves to the bottom to change to x to the positive 6th. Is it confusing or is it not so bad? And then here's about as big as they get. All of these gotta be to the negative first. So, what you can do when you see this, anyone know what the shortcut is just to do right away? Flip it. Because you're just raising it to the first, which is not changing what it is. But since it's negative, everything's gonna be flipped. So this will move up. And this will move down. And then the only thing we have to move is this. Remember, it doesn't matter if the number's negative, it's only the exponents you don't want negative. So this would move down, and you'd be left with a 6 on top, a negative 3, x cubed, x squared on the bottom. So now you gotta simplify. 6 over negative 3 is 2, and then there's still a negative there. X cubed, x squared, x to the 5th. Okay, so that's about the longest one. The graphing we'll look at some other time.